Human brain development is amazing, in part because at any given point in time, each of us is still a work in progress. Each individual is never really quite finished, as our brains continue to change as a result of experience throughout our lifespan. We touched upon this in a previous lecture about brain plasticity earlier in the course. However, nowhere is the phenomena of brain plasticity more evident than when the brain is first being formed. The process of brain development begins, of course, in the womb. During prenatal development, the growing human brain produces an impressive average of 250,000 new brain cells every minute. There are a number of points during this process, called neurogenesis, when more than 50,000 brain cells are produced each second. By about the 20th week of gestation, over 200 billion neurons have been generated. After this time, there is a period of what is called pruning. During this process, neurons that have not been successful in making connections with other neurons die off. This overproduction of neurons and synaptic connections is nature's way of helping to assure that a child is born with a brain that is adequate for survival. As the brain develops, behaviors begin to emerge. For example, by 9 weeks, the embryo's rapidly developing brain allows it to bend its body, hiccup, and to react to loud sounds. At 10 weeks, it moves its arms, breathes amniotic fluid in and out, opens its jaws, and stretches. Before the first trimester is over, it yawns, sucks, and swallows, as well as feels and smells. By the end of the second trimester, the fetus can hear, and by the end of pregnancy, it can see. But how could we possibly know all of this? The refinement of ultrasound technology has permitted clinicians to gain greater insight into the behaviors of the fetus. Using this technology, we have gained a great deal of knowledge in 3 major areas: fetal movement, sensory development, and fetal learning and memory. Let's talk about some of these areas, and let's start with movement. Many of the movements seen in the newborn just after birth do not rely on the brain, but are reflexes controlled by the spinal cord. Some of these simple reflexes, such as the withdrawal reflex, are complete in the fetus as early as 8 weeks gestation. Reflexes are very different from purposeful voluntary movements, which develop during the first year of life. Such movements depend on the maturation of the brain, and in particular on the myelination of axons, which starts around 8 weeks gestation. In fact, all primitive reflexes have to be lost before voluntary movement can be mastered. Reflex activity usually disappears in normal babies by about 8 months. The fetus does exhibit a wide range of movements, starting with slow movements of the spine, arms, and legs, around 7.5 weeks gestation. The variety of movements increases rapidly over the next 3 to 4 weeks. And fetal thumb sucking can be seen as early as 12 to 14 weeks gestation, and fetuses actually show a preference for sucking one thumb over the other. Thumb sucking preference has been shown to predict handedness later in life. For example, if a fetus prefers to suck the right thumb, he or she will be right-handed. Now let's talk a little bit about the use of ultrasound to study the prenatal development of the senses and learning. Sensory development in the fetus has been studied mostly in response to sound, and hearing can be shown as early as 23 weeks gestation. How can researchers know this? Well, first, fetuses will show a startled response to very loud sounds, and if the sound is of a more normal tone or a more normal volume, fetuses respond with a slowing of heart rate, for example, when the mother is talking. There is evidence to suggest that fetuses can distinguish between different speech sounds and that they show a preference for the mother's native language. What is even more amazing is that not only does a fetus recognize particular sounds in the womb, they also appear to remember them. For example, in one study, babies whose mothers consistently rested in front of a popular television program during pregnancy became alert, stopped moving, and showed slowing of their heart rate a few days after birth when that same theme song of the program was played. This behavior was not seen in babies whose mothers had not watched this program during pregnancy. This indicates that the fetus is able to learn and remember familiar sounds and retains this information after birth. Another technique that has been used to study learning in the fetus is called habituation. Habituation is the decrease in a particular behavioral response that occurs when a new stimulus is presented over and over. For example, a fetus will respond with a sudden jerk or kick in response to a very loud sound, such as a door slamming. When the loud noise is repeated, the fetus stops responding to it. In other words, it habituates to the sound. In an environment of constant sensory stimulation, and the uterus is no exception, the ability to ignore meaningless stimuli is essential for efficient functioning and survival. Studies have shown that fetal habituation is predictive of cognitive function in early childhood. To sum things up, it's very clear that behavior doesn't begin at birth, and that the fetus is very aware of and sensitive to stimulation from the internal and external environment. It is important for to-be parents who want to provide or who want to facilitate the development of their baby to understand that providing excessive or abnormal stimulation of the fetus can adversely affect the development of the brain in ways that can influence behavior well after birth. The best way to promote healthy brain development is to have a healthy pregnancy. Thank you.